let's go back to 1964 now. And Basri Soomani, a young Singaporean Malay Muslim man, is getting ready to join 20,000 other Malay Muslim men for a procession to celebrate the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. As it always is in my country, it is like a sweltering, I don't know, it'd be 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Beads of sweat are collecting under his songkok, his traditional hat. And then his friends and he, they move deeper into the city with the procession, and at this intersection, they see huge arguments happening between Chinese Singaporeans and the Malay people in the procession. And it's not clear who starts the fights, but what's clear is that the fights escalate. And within months, they're full-blown race riots that engulf the whole island, deploy the entire police force. People are using bicycles, chains, and acid baths and iron rods as weapons. And the races, the four major races of the country, Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Eurasian, are polarized. They are at odds with each other. At the end of it, 506 people are injured, 36 people are dead. It's the worst violence the tiny island nation of Singapore has ever seen. So how has brand Singapore gone from being a culture and a country disconnected to now the country with the second highest GDP per capita in the world, looking at it as an organization, as a brand, one unified people under an identity, and one of the four Asian tigers. Now, I'm not saying Singapore is perfect at all. I just wanted to bring you a little bit of something from my side of the world. So we still have our issues with disconnection, but it is a fantastic case study for how organizations with disconnection in their culture can be healed through the power of human connection. And back to how Singapore did it in a minute. But I know exactly what it's like to work both at a brand that has a culture of connection and a culture of disconnection. When I was little 23-year-old Simone, I was very lucky to be brought out to Virgin Radio in Dubai to work under Richard Branson for 5 years. And do any of you here, we have Virgin Radio Canada, I know. Are you familiar with the Virgin Group? So you understand the brand values are like being a maverick, accepting people as they are, but also for us as creatives behind that brand, the number one imperative was you were creative first. Whatever politics is happening in the office, whatever, all that other stuff is irrelevant. The product has to be innovative. And we also had a team that was of every color to represent every color of the diverse population we were broadcasting to. And this is 2009, so well ahead of the diversity movement. And what we found was, because we were the same age and the same cultural background as the people we were broadcasting to, we could speak to their heart, create content that landed. No surprise that this station is now the jewel in Virgin Radio's radio group crown. It grew exponentially and financially, and we created some of the best radio of my career. Now, you can imagine my surprise in 2015 when I moved to Singapore to work at another radio station. And this time, it had a very top-down hierarchical structure. Do organizations still exist like that in North America? Okay, great. I did this speech for Scandinavians recently, and they have quite a flat structure. They're like, what are you talking about, girl? So hierarchy is built into my culture. For example, in Mandarin, even if you refer to your uncles or your aunts, you refer to them as like first auntie, second auntie, depending on their rank. You know, we swap business cards with 2 hands and 2 thumbs and our shoulders rolled over, and we receive them the same way. It's imbued into everything we do. But if you take hierarchy and you mix it with disconnection, you get a very, very toxic thing to creativity. People fear to fail. So after you come from Virgin Radio, where he's like, how many times have I got to try go to space till we get it right? You know, I was working in that environment, and now failure was not tolerated. People feared leadership. And of course, everybody wanted to move up that hierarchy, so there was infighting and disconnection, and employees were lonely. Not a surprise. We spoke not to the heart of our audience, we spoke down to them. We didn't have a temperature gauge for them, because here's the thing. People who are disconnected cannot create content that connects, because they cannot even connect with themselves. And this leads to self-connection, which I'll get into in just a moment. I woke up one day, I had this epiphany. If this tiny little radio station on this tiny red dot that's not changing lives is going through this, is being sabotaged by a culture of disconnection, how many organizations, huge brands, or even worse, medtech, people who are creating things that are going to change our future, are having their innovation sabotaged by a lack of human connection in the culture? I quit the radio in 2019. I launched my speaking business. Ryan from The Gathering is one of the first people to support me and bring me to Canada to speak before the pandemic. And I get to share this message now all across the world. And in my research, the most fascinating model that I'm going to share with you, so you have a tangible takeaway today, is a model on how you can assess yourself and keep yourself accountable to your own connection. So Bruce A. Austin at the Rochester University of Technology, he came up with a scale to measure loneliness. And he found 3 types of loneliness that people identify. The first is intimate loneliness. This is a craving for a partner or a best friend that you can truly be vulnerable with. So the question is, do you have that in your life? Does your organization give its people time to nurture the relationship that their employees have with their spouses? That might be a crazy question for Canada, but certainly in markets like Hong Kong, Singapore, the work culture is extreme. There isn't that time to spend with your husband or wife. The second rung of loneliness is relational loneliness. These are like when people no longer talk to members of their family. They don't feel part of a social fabric that there are people available to them. So you don't necessarily have to be vulnerable in this context, these people. But these are people you could call, like, hey, can you just look after my dog for 2 minutes? I have to go to the doctor. You know, this is just knowing that people are available to you. And the third rung of loneliness is collective loneliness. And this is where organizations can come in. Collective loneliness is where people feel they might have the other 2 rungs, but I don't have a tribe like me. I don't have people who have the same shared vision, like what I had Virgin Radio, creativity, #1 imperative. My organization does not give me a shared vision, or it does not give me groups within it, like diversity and inclusion groups, that employees who are interested in that can band together and have that shared commonality. So for me, the antidote of loneliness is connection. So I've flipped this model. The first stroke, of course, for intimate connection. Do you have that partner that you can be vulnerable with? The second stroke is for relational. The third stroke, and this is the really important one, is the I for self-connection. It's a drop-down stroke. And in my book, Secret Pandemic, I interview a wonderful Canadian based out of Toronto called Tim Sitt. He's a social worker, and he defines self-connection as the process and the act of being in touch with the worthiness of oneself, regardless of the external experience you're having. So are you aware of your triggers, how you feel? Does your organization give you those mental health days off? Does your organization give you the working hours that you can have moments to sit with yourself and connect with yourself? Because here's the truth. If you don't have great connection with you, you cannot connect well with others. The very final stroke at the bottom here, of course, collective connection. That you have people in hobby groups, cycling groups, skiing groups, whatever you might be interested in. I saw some ladies essay talking about SHEEF, a group for females in business and leadership roles. Do you have a group that you can go to who has a shared vision and perspective? Now, if you can look at this and say you have all 4 elements of this, you are better connected than most people. In our lives, most of us will have experienced not having one of these rungs. Now, I'm held accountable to this every single day, because this character is Wang in Mandarin, and it's actually the character for my surname Heng. So every day when I look at it, I go, are you just getting up on stages around the world speaking about this, or are you living this? And it means emperor in Mandarin. When I look at it, I don't see a grand man on a throne. I see that humble shopkeeper immigrant who showed up 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, for 20 years, for people, creating human connection, magic, tethered to a box.